Thank you so much for attending this, and I think we're going to be able to keep you awake also, because we have a lot of practical examples, a lot of use cases in audio, of course, because we're a room full of audio nerds here. And I'm going to also talk a bit about the ethics, because how we think editorially as journalists and as serious media companies is so important now when we face this new challenge of AI and generative AI. I have two distinguished guests on stage. That's Anna and Nikki from Prisa in Spain and also from BBC Sounds. So I'm going to ask you up a little bit later, so you will talk about your projects and focuses as well. So let's go. We have a lot of ground to cover. I'm going to start by giving you a couple of examples from Swedish radio. Some of the people attending the AI Summit yesterday saw these examples, so see it as a bit of repetition. AI is important for us, and we've been working with it for a couple of years. I mean, since before the pandemic, we have done automations, for example, and transcription also. But now, of course, when we see this new wave of AI with the generative skills, of course, we can enhance our journalism even more, but also face more substantial risks. A first example is how we curate our news playlists in our app. And this is done via an editorial algorithm the fuel for that is news values, we call them. It's a kind of metadata that we put on every news clip, which decides where in the running order in our app or on our website a certain piece of news ends up at any given moment of time. And basically, it's lifespan, short, standard, long. It's general news values, like what's the magnitude of the news story? Is it extraordinary or is it kind of standard? And this is what decides basically where in our product that the story ends up. So this is, you should be able to... Yes.
Krypterade telefonchattar står I centrum när.
So you can see you can just flick through, like skip to the next clip. It's treating a news clip like a song in a Spotify playlist. Like the clips go from 25 seconds to 2 minutes roughly.
De två Tyresöbröder som nu misstänks för terrorplaner med koppling till IS I Somalia. Höra.
As the Swedish flag was raised at the NATO headquarters in Brussels today, the NATO flag was also raised in ceremonies around Sweden.
And we do 12 different languages. So you imagine also that there are so many different news mixes that we can use AI and automation to do. I said that when we also focus on what to do in AI, I mean, we can't just like test everything and anything. We have to go back to our overall strategies and to have that as a guiding star for what we do, basically. And for us, it's our public service values. So for example, in this system, the news curation, we have centered on a checklist of carefully selected public service media values that we think are especially important in relation to our PSM mission. A first one for Swedish radio is to be on location, to really be out there, to witness for ourselves, to talk to real people. I mean, journalism is about going out there and not just sitting about the desk looking at digital streams. It's talking to real people, right? And to have those affected voices in the audio clips, because we know that it's so important to engage people is by putting other human beings at the center of the news stories, not only to talk to politicians and experts all the time. We have plenty of that in our audio journalism. To have new perspectives is another SR value, as we call them. To have the contrarian view or the unexpected perspective. To provide our own analysis around the news story. To put the news story into context and give the background and have the reporters and commentators who know something for real. And then also a last one is that we want to have really strong and compelling storytelling. So stories with these values, we give prominence in our digital products. And it's been working very well. We have basically 33 news-producing newsrooms that use the same system, 26 local channels around the country. And here we see a lot of AI potential going forward, both with these kind of more personalized mixes or regional geographic mixes, but also with the new generative search capabilities. I mean, we want people in the car to be able to talk to Swedish radio and said, what happened with that terror alert in Munich the other day? Maybe get the summary and also get suggested news clips by Swedish radio only using voice. Transcripts is of course so important for all audio companies to make our content more searchable for people in the newsroom. So all our podcasts and all the 350 news clips that we produce every day, we transcribe them automatically in our system. So it looks like this. You go into our internal tool here. And this is a clip, of course, about the Ukraine.
Enligt Ukraina har hundratals begravda kroppar hittats i staden Izium i de östra delarna av landet. Staden var fram till nyligen ockuperad av ryska styrkor men har återtagits av Ukraina. Uppgifterna kommer från Ukrainas president Volodymyr Zelensky.
Well, Zelensky, that's a ski resort in Sweden, so it's not Zelensky. And of course, this is what happens with automatic transcription. You get these faults, and then the system catch up if you retrain it, and then it learns also that it's Zelensky. It doesn't matter in the sense that we don't use this as an audience-facing product, this one. It makes marvels for our internal search. It's been so important for us to kind of, if you want to scan a news topic, it was mentioned in that podcast. I had no idea. So for us, and we know that a lot of companies, Radio France, Mathieu, are working with a similar system. But now we're taking this to the next step, and we want to surface also the transcripts to the audience. We know that 1.5 million Swedes have some kind of hearing impediments, and of course they have the right to be able to access also our audio content. So we're doing a project now about facing the audience also with these transcripts, and it will also make our navigation in the app easier. So this is a prototype that we're working on at the moment.
Pompa och ståt, men också sakpolitik. Strax mer om det franska statsbesöket.
Ja, som dominerar Studio 1 denna eftermiddag, Helena Groll och Kajsa Boglind här, där president Macron om en liten stund bara ska tala säkerhetspolitik.
Vi lyssnar och analyserar det där talet efter klockan 17 och sen om korruptionen inom Ukrainas militär.
Yeah, so this is basically live radio, and the transcript comes around roughly 45 minutes afterwards, so it's not live. But we don't correct it in any way, so it's completely automatic, and we're also explaining that in a transparent way that, hey, it can contain errors. But we see with the new AI like generated models that the transcription becomes so much better. So for example, we have built this transcription engine by ourselves. We call it SRSTT, but we're now using the Whisper model from OpenAI to enhance this transcription, and it becomes so much better also for live content. And the fantastic thing is, of course, also that those models are language agnostic, so they transcribe almost any language. Another experiment that we're doing, or a prototype also, is that for all our podcasts, I mean, we're not great at writing text at Swedish Radio. And we want to have these kind of really clear and captivating captions or descriptions of our podcast, and headlines, of course. And everything is done manually today, of course. Now we take the transcript of the whole podcast, and with very meticulous prompting, we ask it to do an automatic suggestion for one of these captions. So we have made trials with the Hugging Face model, which is one AI tool, which is open. We have customized one of these chat GPTSs to do this for us, a kind of podcast editor. It's pretty good, actually, if you can read the Swedish there. The fascinating thing with that model is that you do some prompting and give it some instructions, but then it kind of creates another layer of prompts which are very, very detailed and fascinating to read through, and then you can correct those, of course, and prompt it in the next stage. So this is something that we're looking into. A more generative AI thing, and this was just a kind of experiment that we did at AI Hack Jam together with public service colleagues. That was, we have these playlists, as you saw, but the intros, we don't have a really good intros to the playlist. It plays the first clip straight away, and we don't have a good bridge or glue between the clips. So we just uploaded all the clips, the model transcribed them, and created automatic intros using generative AI and synthetic voice. So you would have a kind of studio presenter presenting the playlist and also doing the bridge from one clip to the other. You can just see this on this prototype here.
Ikväll är det dags för Sverige att möta Österrike i en spännande EM-kvalmatch.
So synthetic voice.
Få en snabb inblick i lagets tankar, förberedelser och förväntningar inför matchen.
Dess match i EM-kvalet ikväll för Sverige hemma mot Österrike.
So this is our real news clip. Then we go to the bridge.
Syn på Österrike. Låt oss nu utforska Sveriges taktiska val inför matchen.
Det blir en förändring i den svenska startelvan mot Österrike jämfört med matchen mot Estland. Och det...
Yeah, so you see, it's a kind of automated product. This is generative AI territory, and we are very kind of hesitant when we tread into those territories. We have this model in a network that we have in the Nordics called Nordic AI Journalism, where we're kind of mapping out different use cases. Up there is products that face the audience. Here it's more kind of internal newsroom tasks. There we have the rule-based models, basically algorithms that perform the same task and don't make up content. Whereas here we have the generative AI models that can create unique content. So if I map out some of these examples, the transcription is of course rule-based. It should transcribe only what's in the audio, even if it has some errors sometimes. Here we have the internal transcription. Here we have the experiment that we do with getting a first draft of this kind of podcast caption. And here we have the more generative intros and glues in the news clips. You understand the model? Here also, and we're going to come to that in a second, here we see, of course, also an external search of AI fakes or AI-created content. And we're going to talk about those questions about trust in a minute. In this model, I think there are ethical considerations to do in every one of these boxes. Here, of course, we have to be transparent to the audience about what we're doing. Are we using synthetic voice or are we doing automatic transcriptions? Transparency is needed here, and we actually have developed now in the Swedish media industry a new suggestion for recommendations for transparency that is basically harmonizing a standard for the whole of the media industry in Sweden. So that's a new thing that we have done now. Here, when we use that, of course, if we're going to publish that or even if we use it, it needs human review. Here, you all know that there are risks of factual errors, so we have to check it carefully, even if we use one of these suggestions. And here is the real editorial danger zone for us. And we're going to come back to that, but both, for example, Swedish Radio and the BBC, we are very, very careful with having AI-generated content to the audience. So, going to these issues about trust in the age of AI, we have seen this. I mean, we have seen it around the elections, and we're going to see more about it in this super election year. We have seen it, fake clips from Biden, and this one from the London mayor, Sadiq Khan.
I control the Met Police. They will do as the mayor of London tells them and obey orders.
It was deliberately made to give the impression that I'd said what I hadn't said, but it looked and sounded so authentic. You know, we did get concerned very quickly about what impression it may create.
So, I mean, this kind of faked stuff, I mean, it can cause social turmoil, no? I mean, it's going to lead to real-life consequences, and it's already doing that. So I'm very happy, not just me, but the whole business should be very happy to see these kind of new initiatives now to safeguard trust. We've seen a very ambitious project or focus in the BBC now with BBC Verify. Our sister company, SVT in Sweden, also has a Verify desk. We see new industry standards now. We're trying to kind of mark out and also show the provenance of content. There are different kind of projects. The C2A project, which is a global kind of standard for also verifying images and video and that kind of stuff. This is going to be hard. You know, it's going to be really hard to detect fake audio and fake images, you know, because, I mean, they're going to be published in such a multitude of ways, but it's very good that at least we in the media industry can try to find these standards. In the EBU, we have a big database of public service journalism, 2.4 million articles coming from 30 different public service media providers in a project that we call European Perspective. And for us, we're trying out kind of generative conversational search engines in this database, and where we think that safeguarding trust is that we know that all of that journalism comes from trusted public service media companies. So I'm going to show you that example before we go to Anna.
Biden is on the run from his record and lying like crazy.
So we call this chatbot Neo. So I'm going to put the question to it now. Why did Sweden become a member of NATO? So it looks up and gets 10 news pieces from different public service media companies. You get a summary of what's going on in this area. And then you can find a proper one of the clips. Then you can play. This one from ZDF, German.
For centuries, Sweden's cannons were only aimed at the Baltic Sea as a deterrent. As a neutral country, it was possible to stay out of Europe's wars.
You get it here with the automatic transcription and translation.
It was suddenly 5-12 for the Scandinavian sense of security. The government knocked on NATO's door, and now they are allowed to join.
So this is basically one of the reasons that we don't want to give away all our content to the AI companies. We think that it's a really good strategic asset for us to have updated, trusted content, and that we can also guarantee with our well-known brands that what we publish is, trustworthy. Anna, welcome up on stage. Anna Ormaechea from Prisa in Spain. You have a really interesting project that we would like you to talk a little bit about with Verific Audio.
Verific Audio. That's it. Thank you so much, Ollie. Congratulations. Amazing the examples that you show up. Last year, you invited me also when we were talking about Victoria. That was our synthetic voice of for the radio, and now she's like an old woman. Everything has changed so much. So let's go if you are asleep or no. Okay. It's the last one.
La respuesta de la funcionaria desató una polémica y ha causado indignación en las redes sociales. La respuesta de la funcionaria desató una polémica y ha causado indignación en las redes sociales.
Okay, who thinks that the first voice is the real one? The rest, do you think is the synthetic voice, the first one? Okay, not so asleep. Okay. But really, I mean, we know, have been talking before in some chats about 11 Labs and other companies that they are doing clonation of voice like in such a good quality that is so hard to understand what is the difference between a clonation and a real voice. And so this is already like a different kind of ecosystem that we are. And also, we have been listening today also that there is the American elections, but there is half of the population that is going to vote this year. It's Mexico election, is Brazil, is Russian. So it's a new reality. This year, we are radios, and we know that this is not the same that it was 5 years ago, or it was 4 years ago, or even 3 years ago. It's a new front for us. It's like I think that we really are in a new ecosystem where we really need to fight a new war, which is the misinformation in audio. There is a lot, and it's going to be a lot of audio fact-checking, audio deepfakes during this year. So we need to do audio fact-checking. So that's what we have done in Prisa Media. We have developed a tool that is for our journalists. You were talking about tools for newsrooms, so Verifica Audio is for our journalists, for our newsrooms, and it's a simple tool. It's just to verify if one audio is a deep fake or is a real audio. And the main point of that is that we are a radio station, and for a lot of years we have built a trust with our listeners, and we really need to keep on to maintain this relationship of trust with them. But life has changed. So this is us, just so you understand why we have developed this tool. We are Prisa Media. We are like the biggest publisher on Spanish in the world. Maybe you know us for El País and everything, but we have 30 brands of audio in Spain, Colombia, Chile, and Mexico. We have the biggest radio stations, talk radio stations in all those countries. So we are the biggest audio producer on Spanish in the world. So we really thought that that was our responsibility. If with Cadena Ser, this year is we are on our birthday is 100 years. So for 100 years, we have built this really trust relationship with our listeners. But life has changed, as we have seen. So we think that now, if we really want to keep this relationship with our listeners, we really need to give a step one, and then just. It's not only to create this real news, but we need to verify also the audio that is outside there. So how is working Verify Audio? It's quite simple. It's for Caracol, W Radio, SER, ADN, Chile, Mexico, Colombia, and Spain. So it detects fake audio that are generated with clonation, with voice clonation, and also if they have been through digital editing. But now we are focusing on the first one. I don't know if we can have a look to the tool. In fact, we have two models. We have developed with two different kind of AI models, with a transformer one and with a fine-tuning of machine learning. And there is one we do a comparison between a real audio and the audio that we think that is a fake one, or the other model is identification. I mean, if I receive in my WhatsApp Pedro Sanchez audio saying something, and I'm not sure if it's real or it's not real, due that I have interviewed Pedro Sanchez a lot of times in my radio station. I upload a Pedro Sanchez real audio. I upload the audio that I'm not sure if it's fake or it's not fake, and the model says, okay, it's synthetic voice in an 85% of possibilities. We play with percentage. It's quite hard to say it's 100% fake or it's 100% real. And identification one is without comparison. So that's us. We just launched the tool a couple of weeks ago. Now we are working with all our newsrooms in Colombia, Mexico, España, and Chile. It's a quite very simple tool, but well, we're trying to do a cross-border or cross-country verification committee. So all the countries are working together. We think that this year is going to be more useful in Mexico because of the elections. And next steps. We are working with the model. We are trying to do a better model, a more creative model, and also we are working with music files to try to do the same, like to detect this deepfake of audio files. And well, but at the end, our goal really is to maintain this trust that we have had with our listeners for 100 years and try to keep on with, if there is people out there using AI for bad, I think it's our responsibility as radios to use AI for good. So, thank you.
Muchas gracias, Anna. Just two quick questions. Sometimes the tech is always lagging behind the fakers, if you see what I mean. How have you thought about that aspect? Won't they be able to find new methods into duping us?
That for us is the first step. That's why we have next steps. I mean, it's the same. If there is people outside thinking on how to use in the wrong way the AI, so I think it's our responsibility to keep on trying and teaching and training our models to be as good as the bad guys doing.
One final question. I mean, if some of the other media companies are interested in the tool, would you be able to share it somehow, or can other parties test it also?
More than happy, but in 6 months. Because in fact, there is really not a lot of deepfakes on Spanish right now, so we have trained our tool with deepfakes that we have done ourselves. So now it's open, so now we are starting training with real deepfakes in Mexico, for example, and we really want to, it's like we are on a POC term, so we think that in 6 months we will be able to open 2 other newsrooms, of course.
Great, and stick around, we will soon hear from Nikki, but before that I want to give you some more practical use cases and examples of how AI is basically changing our industry. And I think it's very interesting. When we were here last year, I mean, there was so much kind of hype and talk about like, whoa, AI-generated content is going to change everything completely. I think we have calmed down a little bit now, and that all the companies are going into more of the kind of concrete use cases within the newsrooms, and also having a shifted focus a little bit to more internal use cases, to use AI for internal efficiency, at least in public service media companies. But we still see the launch of a lot of public-facing like use cases, and I will show you a couple of them. This is not a new thing, but BBC, since a couple of years ago, they have automatic weather reports using a synthetic voice. So now in so many more locations in the UK, you can hear an automated weather forecast in your postcode.
Here's the BBC weather forecast for W1A. In the afternoon, it will be rather cloudy with longer spells of showery rain look to drift in from the southwest, these locally heavy, some with thunder. Today we'll see a high of 12 degrees Celsius, a low of 7, and there is a chance of rain too, so maybe take an umbrella with you. Here's what you can expect later. Tonight,
we saw one example like this last year from RBB, the German broadcaster, and they use it both for weather and traffic reports. The next one comes from Finland, and actually the Swedish section of Wiley, which is the small section, they are now testing, and maybe they're actually going to launch, I mean, that's the intention, automated news bulletins in the evenings and in the nights, because they're not staffed in the newsroom. So it's going to extract like headlines and content from the published stories on the website and basically do an automatic news update.
Den nya färjan Aurora Båt 9 fastnade i isen på grund av extrem ispress i Kvarken. Svårigheterna uppstod när kraftiga sydliga vindar pressade isen i höga vallar.
This is a beautiful Swedish, a little bit old-fashioned Swedish. I love this accent. The commercial newspapers, of course, are now increasingly using cloned voices to read up content news articles. You can go in as a subscriber in the app, and you will be able to listen to the article which is read by a cloned voice. This is an old colleague of mine, and this sounds exactly like her.
På söndags eftermiddagen hade dödstalet stigit till 25 människor och 72 personer rapporteras vara skadade.
Yeah, and it reads all the articles in some of the Schibsted papers except for obituaries, actually. Generative AI now. Hacker News is a social news website focusing on kind of the digital landscape and AI also. And it basically makes a little podcast by just generating content from the headlines on their website.
Welcome to the Hacker News Recap, where we bring you an exclusive overview of the top 10 posts on Hacker News every day. Today's episode unpacks the tumultuous lawsuit Elon Musk has filed against OpenAI, delves into Apple's U-turn on the fate of progressive web apps in the EU, and reveals the shocking double life of Wirecard's COO as a Russian spy. All right, let's get to it.
Hey, it's a good thing to make kind of add-on content, of course, in a very cheap way. Live transcription, a lot of focus on that. We have some VRT people here, the Belgian broadcaster. They have a massive kind of music event called the Warmest Week in front of a live audience. And their aim is to be 100% accessible, so they did a live transcription using the EBU Eurovox tool. Very good feedback to this. Look at our commercial competitors, the big platforms. Spotify now has kind of automated translations with lip sync also for some of the podcasts, like the Lex Friedman interview here with Jeff Bezos.
La versión original de este episodio fue grabada en inglés. Las traducciones de voz se generan de forma artificial.
La siguiente es una conversación con Jeff Bezos, fundador de Amazon y Blue Origin. Esta es la primera vez que mantiene una conversación de este tipo y de esta duración, y según me dijo, sentí fácilmente que podríamos haber hablado durante muchas más horas, y estoy seguro de que lo haremos.
Y todo tipo de atención médica que salva vidas, etcétera, etcétera. Y hay una cosa que está...
Spanish sounds good?
Yeah, it's a mix of accents.
Yeah.
Happens with...
Yeah, you can use the ChatGPT with voice. Thomas, my colleague, did...
Hi, ChatGPT. This is Thomas. My colleague, Olle Zachrison, he will be doing a presentation, and he will be talking about how AI will change the audio industry. Could you give me like a short summary in 3 bullet points around this area in English?
Thanks a little bit.
Here's a succinct summary on the transformative role of AI in the audio industry. 1. Revolutionizing sound production. AI's capability to enhance audio quality.
Yeah, you get the idea. But and those answers were actually really, really good. Amazon is now launching the kind of next version or more conversational speech with the Alexa model.
What's on your mind?
How did my soccer team do yesterday?
Yesterday, OL Reign won 1-0 against the Portland Thorns.
Can you give me a recap?
Your team was steady all through the first half, with a strong defense and 52% ball possession. Things got heated during the second half with a foul that earned the Portland Thorns a yellow card. OL Reign scored the first goal in the 55th minute.
Yes! Let's celebrate. What's a new pop dance song?
Hot to Go by Chappell Roan is popular.
Cool. Play it.
Sure.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, just slightly American there. Now I'm going to ask Nikki to come up on stage. We're going to come back to a European context now. Or, yes, give Nikki a hand.
That's the bar.
So, Nikki, can you tell us a little bit what's going on in kind of the AI space, the generative AI space, and also how you think about the ethics around this?
Yeah, so I'm not going to show too many examples. I'm going to talk much more about the ethics and the principles, really, which is kind of where the BBC is kind of going. No surprises, we're being quite thorough about our approach to AI. And I think it's really, well, it's great. I've seen some amazing examples there of things you can do. But I think the most key thing for the BBC is about how we respect rights, privacy, and prioritise talent and creativity. And I think that's really fundamental to everything that we're doing around generative AI specifically. And we do have AI use cases already up and running. Like as you said, you saw the thing from the weather, but we also have recommendations, and AI powers a lot of that stuff. But really, what I'm going to talk about is about our generative AI specifically. And the key thing is we have been working a team. So this is actually, I'm from Sounds, and I'm going to sort of show the work from another team in the BBC, our responsible AI team. And they've been working for a number of years, really building up at kind of the principles and the guidelines about how we use AI, and having discussions with all the big players and making sure we have all the right agreements in place. And all the training in place. So that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about. And I'll show a couple of examples of some pilots we're doing, but really it's sort of looking mostly at the principles. So kicking things off, some of you may have seen these. These have been published in October. Key thing here is never undermine the trust of the audience, right? So that means like any additional removal of content in images or video should really be only employed where they wouldn't mislead audiences. I think that's really fundamental. We need to be transparent and accountable, and I think human oversight is key to that. So in all cases, there needs to be a senior editorial figure who's responsible and accountable for overseeing the deployment of generative AI at this stage. I mean, things may change as tools change further down the line, but this is the line from the BBC at the moment. And it always be used in a sort of consistent manner, also in a manner consistent to our editorial guidelines. So acceptable use might be the synthetic voice for the weather app, where there's obviously no human can be used reading the weather in that way to where your location's bespoke to your postcode. So that's not replacing anybody in any way. Or you might deep fake a face to preserve anonymity in a documentary. So those seem like an acceptable use. And I think one of the really kind of key things is we are not using generative AI for news and current affairs. I mean, specifically creating news content. So we are not using generative AI to create news bulletins at this stage, I have to say. That's really important because accuracy, fairness, impartiality, trust, all those things matter, are really crucial to the BBC. We might use them for reversioning, translating, to maximize our kind of output, but we're not going to be creating any news content using generative AI. So since we published those principles, we've now developed detailed guidance for everybody working on AI tools, which includes generative AI. And I don't know, some of you may have seen this. These were published last month, February. And they are our editorial guidelines for the use of AI. If you Google BBC's editorial guidelines for the use of AI, you should have a look. If you haven't seen it already, I think they're brilliant. They're really, really helpful. And then you can see all the sort of details there about how we're going about and the principles that we're using and what you might be able to take away some of that for your organisation. I think what we are doing now, though, is starting to, we are starting to look at a few pilots. So we are doing some pilots internally. Nothing is public facing. We're being quite cautious, and we're thinking about how we might use tools. So for example, some of you may have rolled out Copilot. Maybe you've done it ages ago, but we're bringing Copilot and Copilot GitHub to our teams in the BBC. But while we're doing that with an enterprise account, and we are making sure that everyone's done training, and everything's kind of there's a process behind it. So it's not just kind of an open access, right? Everybody go for it. So it's kind of one step at a time. And these enterprise accounts allow us to keep data protected, but also means we're robust on things like copyright, which, as you know, really essential. Image, audio, anything. It's really important that our the content that we're using to use these tools with are safe with copyright. And as I said, protecting creativity and protecting IP is really important. So all staff receive training. You can't just turn on Copilot. You have to do a couple of hours of training beforehand, and that's going to be the same. Every time a new bit of software comes on board, we're going to have to do the same process. It has to be an enterprise agreement, and we have to make sure everybody's trained. And there's a process, as you'll probably see in the edit if you read this, about how if people want to use new tools, what they have to do. Anyway, so going back to the pilots. The pilots that we're doing are really looking at, the first one is kind of around maximizing the value of existing content. So can we, in this case, as this is a translation tool that the News Labs, our team in BBC R&D, are doing. They're looking at, as you imagine, or as you kind of alluded to, Olle, if we get something wrong in terms of translation on the BBC News website, that is really problematic. It's 1 billion people, over 1 billion people use the news website every month. Right? We can make really quite dangerous things can happen if we get translation wrong. So we're being quite cautious, but there is a translation tool that they're working on, and again, looking at where it needs human oversight and where it doesn't. Another thing we're doing is turning audio to text. I've heard a few people mention they're doing this over the last couple of days. The instance that we're doing is we have tons and tons of commentaries for football games. In this case, it's a horse race. And we also have these live web pages where you can follow along. So you can listen along or you can follow along on the live web pages. But we don't have as many live web pages as we do audio. So can we automate the live web pages using our commentary? So picking out the fouls, picking out those key moments. Obviously, that ends up being by transcription and then kind of pushing that out onto our live web pages and expanding our offer. The next thing we're doing is kind of making things quicker and easier. We know that generative AI has so many kind of potentials to simplify business and editorial tasks. So we're looking at whether journalists can have recommended headlines or summarizing articles. Or in this case, this is a podcast that we have. There's like a gazillion episodes of In Our Time. It's been going forever. It's a history podcast. How can we use generative AI to help us search that? So, can I have the episode? You talked about this, in fact, some similar thing you're doing internally you've done, but can I have an episode that mentions the Russian Revolution? Can I, exactly, to help you kind of manage and explore this. And then I don't know did you get rid of the last one? Oh, yeah, you did. Right, okay. So I think the key thing about the BBC is we're doing it cautiously. There's a number of other pilots that, this time next year we'll be able to tell you a bit more about. We are exploring all the sort of tools, but we're making sure that we're doing it in a kind of cautious and measured way.
Great. And when I have you here, can I just ask one question where I think we see some differences? Anna, you just struck a deal with OpenAI, didn't you?
It wasn't me. It was my company. It was public last week. Prisa Media, we signed a contract with OpenAI, same as Le Monde and Axel Springer. So it's a deal that in one hand let OpenAI do a trial with our content, with all our content on Spanish, so they can train the large language models. And in the other hand, also we are going to be like on these results, like in the next generations of ChatGPT, the results, like our content on Spanish from our brands will be there. So to me, in fact, it's my company, but I believe on that decision also. There is different kind of decisions. There is the decision from New York Times that battle against them. For me, it's just thinking on our listeners and our users. The thing is that we are arriving to a post-search and post-social media ecosystem. Every day is more difficult to reach audiences. So we really think that these new audiences, they are going to start being in ChatGPT. So we want to be there with our best content and our verified content.
And Nikki, BBC is not going that way.
No, completely the opposite. Yes, it's really interesting and hearing, the fact that you've done a deal with OpenAI. I think the BBC is being much more cautious, as I said, and are at the moment keeping very much a strict wall around our content.
It's a very tough question, and also it's so good that we can discuss it openly when we have different kind of perspectives on it. I don't think maybe we have time for any audience questions. I think it's better if you have any questions to come up to us. Now we're going to let you go and go to the party tonight. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.